So those of you who caught my Quake history video know, Quake 1 was a revolutionary game that basically kicked off all of the first-person shooters we have today. Hell, it was also the renaissance of modding. Yes indeed, Team Fortress was originally a mod for Quake. So today, I'm going to be explaining the best mods for Quake 1, both single player and multiplayer. Obviously, the first step is installing Quake. For some of you, that means going and getting some floppy disks out of a drawer. For others, it means getting a CD. And for people like me who no longer have access to the original materials, it means buying it on Steam. But I recommend if you're going to get it, go big or go home. Get the Quake Collection, which includes the original Quake, the Quake Mission Packs 1 and 2, which were done by separate companies that no longer exist, but are still solid experiences, as well as Quake 2, the Quake 2 mission packs, Quake 3, and Quake 3's expansion. But even if you decide to just go with the original, this list still applies. Now in the video description, I will have a link to Zhakaron.com with download links for the mods and utilities I'll be describing here. First, we're going to talk about engine. You see, eventually Quake would be open sourced to where you could basically make your own version of Quake, and that's exactly what people did. Now, Valve Software went and released GL Quake, and what GL Quake was it was a graphics enhancement, but honestly, GL Quake kind of looked worse than the software renderer, depending on how things, depending on what you were looking at. So eventually, this GL Quake concept got entirely abandoned, but it still uses the original Quake engine, and all of these derivative Quake engines go off this original Quake concept. Now this engine is included in what's called WinQuake. WinQuake, I believe, does come with the Steam version of Quake. Now if you go to the experts at QuakeOne.com, these are people who still play Quake online today. They will recommend Crack or any other engine that uses the Quake 1 engine because they only play competitively on the Quake 1 engine. They compensate for the lag in their head, they play locally to where lag doesn't matter, they basically just play in the original engine only. Now, contrary to what this little community over here says, id Software abandoned the original Quake engine entirely, and they released what was called Quake World, and this was the multiplayer, optimized, and enhanced version of Quake. Now, it did not play single player, but it focused on multiplayers to where it introduced a concept known as push latency, which was packet prediction. Say you were running along. In the original Quake engine, when you encountered lag, delay between data packets, your character would go duh, 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 based on where the server was pushing you. In Quake World, however, your client is moving independent of the server. And what's happening is the server and the client are both predicting where everything moves between data packets. Now, this doesn't make the most accurate things in the world, but it creates a fluid experience that simply could not be had in the past over the internet unless you were using a T1 circuit or something really high. Obviously, we have broadband now, which is why the community still believes that GL Quake is viable, but it's outmoded. Now, a lot of derivative engines came out of the Quake World engine, and the king of these is the Dark Places engine. The Dark Places engine brings a lot of new graphics enhancements to the table, but also keeps the spirit of original Quake there. It allows you to play single player or multiplayer on Quake World, so it actually grabs elements from both Quake and Quake World, combines them in a way that allows you to play on pure Quake World servers with the graphic enhancements of Dark Places. Now, there are plenty of alternative engines if you don't particularly like this one, but if you're playing Quake World or you're playing single player, in my personal opinion, this is the best engine to go with. Now, I immediately recommend going to downloads, and on the download page at the top here, you'll find the download link for Dark Places. You go ahead and put that into the Quake folder under Steam, and you no longer need to have Steam open while you're playing Quake because you're not playing Quake, you're playing Dark Places. Now, under Quake Art Enhancement Projects, I regret to inform you that the Ultra Texture Pack, the 2.7 gigabytes, that's gone now. However, the Quake Retexture Remodel project is still accessible. You can access it under Downloads, and you can download the map textures and the item textures, as well as map textures for the first expansion pack to Quake. You will also have access to the R-Lights file and the R-Lights file to, once again, the first expansion mission pack 1. So by installing the enhanced textures, obviously all the walls and whatnot are going to look better. And for the R-Lights, it's basically going to allow you to turn on the real lighting mode where everything casts real-time shadows, something that Quake didn't have. And it will improve the performance of the game, while that feature is active. Note that these files should be put in your ID1 folder under Quake. So it should be Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Quake, and then ID1. Now the first thing we're going to talk about is single-player mods. And by that I mean single-player maps, that is, places to explore under the standard single-player definition. We're going to say dark places, but you could use any other engine they recommend that is not multiplayer exclusive to experience this content. There is plenty to explore and enjoy as far as Quake 1 content goes. However, if you're looking for a more structured experience, if you're looking for the best of the best when it comes to single player, at least in terms of a narrative experience, then I have to recommend Nehahra. I actually have a separate video on this YouTube channel that spoils the entire mod start to finish, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm simply going to recommend that you download it, and the download link will once again be in the Zhakaron link in the video description with all the other mods. Going to the download section here, you're going to see Nehahra Full, the Seal of Nehahra, and the Tides of War expansion pack. The Tides of War expansion pack isn't very good compared to Nehahra Full, which is awesome, and the Seal of Nehahra, if you want to actually see Quake given a real backstory, this is basically 4 hours of story content. So what you do is you install Nehahra Full, and then you overwrite it with the Seal of Nehahra. Now once Nehahra has been extracted to your Quake folder completely, you're going to want to type darkplaces.exe space dash Nehahra space dash game Nehahra. What this is going to do is it's going to put Dark Places into Nehahra mode. That's right. Parts of Dark Places has been programmed specifically to work with the extra functions of Nehahra. You see, Nehahra comes with its own executable file, which isn't as good as the Dark Places engine, but it doesn't matter because the Dark Places will adapt to being Nehahra. Now, the game Nehahra variable means that it's going to look in the Nehahra directory for data files to override normal Quake. So, if you launch Dark Places normally, it's not going to be in Nehahra mode. You don't have to worry about it. Now go to Save As. Navigate to Steam Apps, Common, Quake, and under Quake, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to change the file type. This is important, from text document to all files. Once you've done this, you can type neh.bat. BAT stands for batch. Basically, BAT files, what they do is they execute like a program, and they run the command that you issued. So in this case, they're going to run the Dark Places engine, and then they're going to use Nehahra mode, and then use Nehahra as the game type. So save neh.bat into your Quake folder, making sure that it's set to all files. If it's set to text documents, what you're going to end up with is neh.bat.txt, and you'll have to delete the .txt at the end, which is irritating for some people's computers because they don't have file extensions enabled, and that's a whole nother can of worms. Now you can also go into the Quake folder and turn that batch file into a shortcut. Put that shortcut on your desktop if you want. Either way, I recommend making a shortcut of Dark Places at the very least. But yeah, boot up neh.bat and enjoy Nehahra. If you want to watch the movies, you'll find that on a menu option called Play Demos. Now, Nehahra does have an unskippable 15-minute opening movie. But if you'd like to skip that opening level, just go ahead and reopen that batch file and type, after the game Nehahra, plus map space NEH1M1. What that'll do is it'll start up the game on Nehahra's first level, having skipped the 15-minute unskippable intro. Now, at which point you're going to need to hit the tilde key. That is right next to the 1 and over tab on American keyboards. If you have a foreign keyboard, I can't help you. Once you hit the tilde key, it'll bring down the command console. Go ahead and type skill and space and then what number you want. 0 is easy, which is basically baseline Quake 1. 1 is normal, which for Nehahra means that it's harder than Quake 1. And then you escalate it up to, I think, 5, which is Nightmare, which is, well, why the hell are you playing this? You just want to get yourself killed over and over. You know, stuff that I have fun playing. Either way, once you finish, just go ahead and type map NEH1M1 to restart the map, or better yet, type restart, which will simply restart the map as it was, except using the new skill. Regardless of if you change the skill or not, you're still going to want to restart the map because it fixes some issues that are caused by skipping the intro in the first place. But once you've done this, you've set your skill, you've restarted the map, you're good to go with Nehahra. However, I personally recommend watching the intro at least once because it is good for Quake. Now, aside from Nehahra, there's also the Abyss of Pandemonium. This is a full-size total conversion that is both single-player and multiplayer to Quake 1. It was an unofficially official expansion pack to the game, and can be thought of as Mission Pack 3, although as far as I know it was never officially endorsed by ID Software. I hear there was a boxed version of it. Since then, however, it has been released in full, and you can get it at ModDB. Once again, there will be a link in the video description to Zhakaron.com where you will have the links to all the mods. Unlike Nehahra, that actually adds a complete backstory and solid narrative, Abyss of Pandemonium takes the mission pack route and simply adds to the original base game Quake and does the same style that Quake did. So you won't have more than, I'd say, 2 pages worth of text, and that's your story. There are no voice-acted cutscenes or anything like that. But once you've played Nehahra, you're done with it, and you've played the mission packs, and you're done with those, this is the next logical thing to play to extend your Quake experience. The final little piece I'm going to mention on single-player maps are the MEXX series. Look them up, they're all titled MEXX through MEXX 10. And they're all worth playing. He's a great developer who ended up getting screwed on that Abyss of Pandemonium deal, that third expansion pack I was talking about. They decided to release it for free, and the result of that was he was screwed out of his money. Well, after that happened, he was still well known for his maps. He still made things for Quake 2 and 3, as far as I can tell. He got into World of Warcraft, became a professional software engineer, and now he is, well, happy in life, not doing mods though. But I pretty much recommend every single map he's ever done. While there are several single player add-ons that I haven't gone over yet that are really good, I'm gonna go on to the multiplayer ones now, specifically the ones that I played and I personally enjoyed. There are many, many more that I haven't mentioned. I'm going to mention a couple right now, like Action Quake, which are definitely worth checking out. However, I will not go over personally here. So definitely search ModDB, find the best, play them, enjoy them. But right now, we're going to talk about Requiem. Not Requiem for Skyrim, Requiem for Quake. They've got it for Quake, Quake World, Quake 2, and Quake 3. We're going to look at the Quake 1 version right now. When you go to the Download Now page, what you're going to see are several links, which are fortunately hosted locally. You see, previously, a lot of other websites used Planet Quake. Well, Planet Quake, the whole Planet network, was GameSpy, and GameSpy was purchased by IGN, and IGN decided to shut the whole kit and caboodle down. So, yeah. But luckily, these are locally hosted, so we don't have to worry about that. Now, as I said, this is a multiplayer add-on, so you're going to need to download the server. You're going to need to install it and then launch it customly. I'm not going to explain how to launch these individually. You're merely going to have to look to the community to figure these out. I'm just now listing my favorite multiplayer mods because you're actually going to have to gather the people to play this with. These aren't servers that are usually hosted and ran by a lot of people. The important things to note about Requiem, the changes are the air gun. So what ends up happening with the air gun is you can blast rockets back, you can knock people into the lava, you can do a lot of things with it. The shotgun can be enhanced into the phaser, which is like the Enforcer's pistol except more powerful. The double barrel shotgun has a flamethrower attachment. The nail gun has the lava gun and pulverizer attachments. The super nail gun has the freezer bomb. The grenade launcher has what's known as a touch grenade, which is more or less an RPG as we know them, where the grenade flies and explodes on contact with its target. The rocket launcher has the death missile and cluster bomb attachments, and the lightning gun can either be changed into the laser gun or the BFG 9000, and we all know what the BFG 9000 does, and if you don't, go play Doom for a while. Now, numbers 9 and 0 on your keyboard have also been enhanced and actually had items added to it. So the eraser, gib gun, and cloaking device, as well as the speedball, health regen, and armor regen are all attached to these final spots. Now, Requiem has special runes that spawn around the deathmatch level as you're fighting, and they do different things. And it's always great getting a different rune, except when you, of course, get the bad rune. Now, here's what really makes Requiem different from things like Rune Quake and whatnot. It has these impulse commands that you can bind in your command console. So, say you type bind A and then the impulse whatever, and put that in quotes, the impulse whatever, and the result will be that it will do these different things. So HoloQuake, for instance, will create a hologram of your character so that enemies will shoot the hologram. You can hide right behind it or somewhere to the side so you can shoot them while they're trying to shoot your hologram. The impulse for the slide allows you to literally do a power slide, make your character move faster. If you combine jumps and slides, you can basically fly around the level at super speed. There are other things like Quake Cam. There's Play Dead, which is simple feigning death, something that the spies could do in Team Fortress. There's a flashlight, there's a grappling hook, there's a jetpack, so on and so forth, all handled by these impulse commands. In short, what I want to call Requiem is the most fun in deathmatch you can have, because it's not just running around shooting each other, it adds all these great elements to the game that you have to take the time to learn and bind the impulse commands. Yeah, you have to take the time to read the instructions and figure out how to set up the server, but once you've done that, it's fun to play. Of course, you will need to find friends to play it with, and I'm not going to help you with that. The second mod I'm going to be talking about for multiplayer is Future vs. Fantasy. Future vs. Fantasy is class-based. What this means is that you can play as the monk, ninja, deity, cleric, mage, fighter, or from the future, the laser android, cyborg, camper, wasteland warrior, quake soldier, doom marine, or sniper. And each class has its own custom weapons and abilities. Now, when I mentioned the deity is actually part of a special mode called Purge mode, where one person will be the deity and that person's team starts gaining points as long as the deity stands on a pedestal. And the idea is that the deity's team has to protect them, whereas the other team is trying to purge the deity and then take the throne for themselves. And it's a kind of capture point mode, except the capture point is actually a person. Anyway, that is just one mode Future vs. Fantasy has to offer. Obviously, it has classic deathmatch, where everyone's out for themselves, team deathmatch, and of course, it has quest mode. And quest mode is very fun. It's basically single-player co-op, except the idea is that you're fighting through levels and your class gains experience points and you level up and you get stronger. And all of this is contained within Quake. So you play through the entire campaign and then take your progress on to the next campaign. At least that's how it works on a properly set up server. Now, they have a server running for it right now, and if you check quake1.com, they will also have information about the server when it updates. This is a rather old site, so the server information might not be up to date, and the download links I can't vouch for. However, I will have a link to it, as well as a link to the Quake Wiki page with the Future vs. Fantasy entry that has a download link of its own. Now, I've confirmed that this download link does in fact have an extractable archive, and in that archive are the progsdat. And that's how you know that a game that you download has the server functionality in it, is it'll have the progs. Because basically the progs is how the server handles things. Otherwise, it's a client only. The next mod we're going to be talking about is Team Fortress. Team Fortress is, yes indeed, the original Team Fortress. You see, Team Fortress 2 is the sequel to a game called Team Fortress Classic that was made by the same people who made Team Fortress, except what they did is after they made this mod, they then got hired by Valve where they produced Team Fortress Classic for the Half-Life engine. So this is the original that started it all. Now, it is a multiplayer mod only, although I have heard of people actually playing it in single player with some limited success. I can't say that playing a soldier, an engineer, or a pyro has any real advantages over playing as the standard Quake character. And unlike Future vs. Fantasy, you won't gain levels or enhance it in any way, shape, or form. You're still limited by your class as far as Team Fortress goes. So I recommend getting a group of friends together to play this in multiplayer. I can vouch for the fact there are several Team Fortress servers still running, although good luck getting a group of people in there as a pickup group. You're definitely going to want to bring your friends. That said, there's nothing wrong with starting a server yourself. Now, you're going to notice on the download page that there is various versions for Team Fortress. Version 2.8 was the final version released in 1998, so that's the one I recommend picking up, and that's the one most people will be using. Now, some of the things Team Fortress 1 had over Team Fortress 2 were class-based grenades, where, for example, the medic would have a concussion grenade that would screw up ability to shoot straight. Spies would have gas grenades, where it would literally contaminate a certain area and everyone had to get out of it, or else they'd take repeated damage, and so on and so forth. Demomen have this ability known as Det Pack, where they're able to put plus det, either 5, 10, or 30, into their command console, and it will, once per life, drop a Det Pack. And that Det Pack will explode after the amount of time in seconds that you specified in the plus det. And basically, after exploding, it will kill everyone in line of sight of it. So it's pretty damn powerful. And it was actually used in certain maps such as Rock 1 to blow open walls and things so that your team could get through. So you'd actually need a demo man to open a certain area of the map. And pretty much everything we know of Team Fortress 2 has its origins in Team Fortress 1. Obviously, Team Fortress Classic was the refined version of this, and there's no harm in playing Team Fortress Classic instead. But if you want to get back to the roots, where it all began, this is the mod to check out. Now, the other half of the people who still play Team Fortress 1 also play MEGA-TF. MEGA-TF is an expansion pack to Team Fortress, done by a completely different group of people. It adds insane things, like, for example, a toaster that you can throw into the water of 2 Fort 4 in order to electrocute everyone in the water. Things of that nature, just wacky stuff. It throws in Simpsons quotes and gives you insane powers and things that really weren't present in the original Team Fortress. Obviously, if you're just looking to have fun with your friends, this is definitely a good thing to use if you don't want to take it too seriously. Now, Rocket Arena was a very interesting mod, and it's available literally for Quake 1, 2, 3, and 4. No matter how you pick it up in which game, it's going to be fun. That said, Rocket Arena 1 and 2 specialized in one-on-one matches in smaller arenas where everyone else basically sat and watched. You see, Rocket Arena was originally a single map for Quake World that Planet Quake was hosting, and the idea is you would join the map to watch the fights, and then when your turn came up, the admin would actually say it was your turn, and then you would enter a teleporter to go into the arena. The two of you would fight, everyone else would watch. There were no mechanical limitations stopping someone from interfering in the fight, except that they would get banned from the custom server. Now, this changed as it rolled into a mod, and it became an official mod, after which they started producing multiple arenas per server, to where you could actually pick from 7 arenas, and you would have a queue for each single arena. So maybe there were 32 people on the server, but they were split amongst 3 different arenas, and that was okay because they preferred to fight in certain ones. And this concept rolled over into Quake 2, and Quake 2 Rocket Arena was perhaps the best Rocket Arena because it had so many different maps with so many different options. Now, what would end up happening in Quake 3 is that while it still had some of those smaller one-on-one maps, it started to move over to the clan arena concept, where entire teams of players would fight each other across an entire map. And this would roll over into Quake 4 as well. But if you've got a group of friends and you want to do one-on-one matches as opposed to large party matches, then Quake 1 Rocket Arena and especially Quake 2 Rocket Arena are highly recommended. Next, we're going to talk about a classic called Capture the Flag. You see, originally, Zoid, a member of id Software, went off and made 3-Wave CTF for Quake. Originally, it was just a mod where you'd have keys that kind of followed the character around after they picked him up, and you'd kill the enemy who had your key in order for them to drop it, then you'd run over it to return it to your base. It was a pretty simple concept back in the day, but eventually he changed it to where he added custom models to the game, where instead of being keys, there were actual flags. Anyway, these required custom versions of the original deathmatch maps, and you actually had to convert the maps yourself. But what they ended up doing is they ended up creating custom levels that weren't even made for Quake. They were specially made for 3-Wave CTF, and the idea is they were perfectly symmetrical so that neither team had any kind of advantage. Anyway, this whole concept of 3-Wave CTF would eventually break into Thunderwalker CTF, which was basically the same game except with more guns and more powers. Thunderwalker CTF can be thought of very closely to the difference between Team Fortress and Mega TF. Anyway, what ended up happening is they took all of the best maps from 3-Wave CTF, from Thunderwalker, and from different packs, and they brought them all together into one. And that is All-Star CTF. And it's highly recommended, again, for any kind of party or group where you just want to jump in and enjoy. Nearly gone from the world is Deathmatch 4 for Quake World. This very obscure plugin is actually a mod for Quake. What it does is it replaces the server variables where you start off with 250 health, 250 red armor. Every time you pick up an enemy's pack, you get 10 additional health. Weapons and armor, power-ups, none of this stuff spawns, so it's really player skill that determines whether or not you win and what the frag count is. So basically, it doesn't matter when a power-up would normally spawn, doesn't matter when weapons would normally spawn, because it's all about how good you are. And this is very controversial because, you know, in Quake you equate skill with knowing the exact time when something's going to respawn, to be there, to take advantage of it, to build a rhythm. That's why Quake Live servers are so punishing for new players, and it's always a one-sided match. So how we get around this is we use Deathmatch 4 mode, at least in Quake 1. And there were a few servers last time I checked that still ran it, but running it yourself isn't very difficult. Now, one of the questions a lot of people have is, how do I install all these mods? Very simple. What you do first is you go into the Quake folder. Now, under the Quake folder, you're going to have to create a new folder. And you're going to name that folder whatever it is. So in this case, it's going to be DM4 for that DM4 mod we were talking about. Once the folder is created, go ahead and unzip the contents of that DM4 folder or whatever folder that you had created for a specific mod. Extract it all in there. Once you've extracted everything from that particular mod into the same named folder, then you're going to need to open up a text document and type darkplaces.exe space dash game space and then the name of the folder that you installed the mod in. So whenever you run that batch file, we explained how to do batch files earlier, and we're going to save it as dm4.bat. Now whenever we run dm4.bat, we're going to end up with the dm4 folder. It basically makes everything work. Now once you open Quake, my first recommendation is to go to Options, go into Change Video Mode, and set it however you want, including full screen options and the resolution. Keep in mind that as you scroll over in the resolution, it's going to change between widescreen, normal, and so on. Now in addition, when you go to the options menu, you can go ahead and go down to the bottom where it says Browse Mods. Now any mods you have installed will be visible here, and DM4 for instance is on that list. So remember any mods that you may have installed and go ahead and activate or deactivate them there at your leisure. Keeping in mind with 99% of mods you can really only have one mod on at a time, and they will completely overwrite each other, therefore it's not a good idea to have more than one turned on. The next thing I recommend doing, at least for all modern PCs, is to turn effects high and lighting high. Now you can customize effects and lighting here. However, I just recommend setting them to high and full for most modern PCs. If you have trouble, knock it down a peg and then customize it until it doesn't lag anymore. But chances are you should encounter zero lag with this game on full settings. Once in game, be it single player or multiplayer, I recommend going to the command console and typing +M look, which enables mouse look. It's a very simple feature that people have been using for a long time. So that wraps up my coverage of Quake 1 mods. It's a damn fun game. It pretty much started modding, even though Doom had mods before it. This is where it really took off. And if you really wanted to make your own Quake mod, check this out. id Software released their source code for Quake on GitHub. So not only can you make a Quake mod, but you could make a Quake game. If you found this modding video of any use, throw a like and follow me for more. Next time, I'll be doing Unreal Tournament 2004 mods. A very rich game indeed. Until then, y'all have a good one.